guys, today I want to talk with you about The Guest List, a crime/thriller novel by Lucy Foley. This novel was published in 2020 and soon enough became the New York Times and Washington Post bestseller. As per usual, we will start this review with a short synopsis and then proceed to the non-spoiler review and wrap this video up with the spoilers. If you haven't read The Guest List yet, then do not worry. I will make sure to let you know when the spoilers begin. So The Guest List tells us one story from 5 different POVs. 2 successful, famous, and seemingly perfect people, Jules and Will, are about to get married. This is a wedding designed to impress. It's an event of the year. Everything is well thought through, from the remote yet trend-setting location to expensive dress, elaborate food, and luxurious party favors. Soon enough, however, the happy couple is forced to realize that perfection is not something that can be planned when it comes to human behavior. Everyone in this wedding has their own secrets that start coming out into the light. And then someone turns up dead. I have to admit that the reason I picked up this novel to read was because the synopsis of it instantly reminded me of And Then There Were None, my absolute favorite of Agatha Christie's books. The remote island, the wide cast of interesting characters, the crime that keeps everyone on their toes. And while I didn't find The Guest List to be as intriguing as And Then There Were None, since, let's be honest, it's difficult to compete with an absolute masterpiece, I still found The Guest List to be thoroughly entertaining and surprisingly clever. In addition to that, I have to compliment Lucy Foley's ability to introduce us to a vast cast of characters and not leave us feeling confused. I have spoken about this back in my review for In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. The whodidit type of crime novels that have to have a variety of characters that are introduced to the readers at almost the same time tend to get rather confusing. Yet Lucy Foley avoided this confusion by choosing to tell us the story from multiple POVs, as well as by naming each chapter after the name of the character and the role in the wedding, making it very easy to mentally switch between the people that matter the most. Such a simple yet effective solution. Besides that, the author did an absolutely excellent job in my eyes, making every POV character into a complex and interesting individual. Every story in this book matters. Nothing feels like an unnecessary filler, and everything shared sooner or later becomes a part of the bigger picture. Probably the thing that I like the most about this novel is that we do not get to know who the victim is until the last 50 pages or so. I love that. I thought it was a very clever way to keep the suspense and create this paranoid feeling that no one is ever actually safe. It's not just that anyone can be the killer, but also anyone can be the victim. This way, every single character in this book is a suspect and a victim at the same time. This book is a roller coaster. Every individual story is interesting and convoluted in their own right. You could easily pick any of the main characters and write an individual book concentrated on their lives, and I honestly believe that that book would be just as compelling as this one. And since it's rather difficult to continue to talk about this novel without spoiling any of the plot details, as well as since we have lots to discuss in the spoiler review, I feel like now it's a great time for us to wrap this up. If you haven't read The Guest List yet, now it's a great time for you to click off this video. Now, I would love to tell you that this novel hooked me from the very first page. It didn't. Despite Lucy Foley being amazing at navigating a large group of individual characters, it still took me a little while to understand the personalities of the different characters, as well as to get into their individual stories. The first 100 pages or so give you so many questions. Who was killed? What happened to Olivia? What happened on Stag? Who sent the note to Jules? Why are these guys so obsessed with their high school days, and why are they being so creepy about it? And most importantly, why is the wedding party consuming this much alcohol on the night before wedding? I would never. All these questions that you don't have any obvious answers to just keep on slowly building up your curiosity level higher and higher until you are left with no other choice but to binge the rest of the book, just to understand what the hell is actually going on. And since the novel did such a great job at structuring its characters and plot lines, I thought in this review we could follow the novel's lead and look at all of our main characters individually as well. So let's start with the hardest one, Olivia. Now that's a character I felt equally unsympathetic and frustrated with. On one hand, she has been through a lot in a rather short period of time. She broke off with her boyfriend to just be dumped by her new fling, to realize that she got pregnant, to be ghosted by the baby daddy, to having an abortion, which I'm not quite sure was actually her decision, or was it something she did because her mom pushed her into doing, to learn that the same man that got her pregnant is now her sister's future husband. And let's not forget just how young Olivia is. I honestly feel that her age plays a very important part in this whole situation. Of course, we all react differently to the bad things that happen to us, but her being this young also means that Olivia just doesn't have enough life experience to deal with all of this or to stand up for herself. Now, I do not have any statistics that would prove my point, but I personally feel that a 19-year-old and a 30-year-old would react very differently to learning that a man who ghosted her after getting her pregnant is now marrying her sister while pretending that nothing has ever happened between them. And while Will is definitely a massive douche for not being there for Olivia after she learned that she's expecting, I cannot blame him for falling for Jules. When he met Jules, he didn't know that she was Olivia's sister. Things like that happen. And therefore, I honestly believe that if he would have just answered to Olivia after she told him that she was pregnant, and then eventually if he would have come clean to Jules right away after realizing that Olivia and Jules are sisters, I believe that all of the situation would have turned out completely differently. Now, I'm not saying that Olivia would not end up feeling hurt, but at least she would have gotten closure. At the same time, she wouldn't feel gaslighted every time she ends up in a room with Will. I think that it's the secret, the inability to openly talk about what happened weighs heavier on her than the situation itself. As I said before, I also felt rather frustrated while reading her chapters, at least during the first half of the book. And I think I felt so due to the fact that for the longest time I didn't have a full picture of what had happened to her. Yes, as soon as we meet Olivia, we see that she is in a very bad place. She is depressed, dissociated, yet we do not know why. All we know is that she is supposed to be celebrating her sister's wedding, which puts us into a position where we do want to sympathize with Olivia, but at the same time, not knowing what happened makes it difficult to empathize. Overall, I would say that I found Olivia's chapters to be some of the most tiresome to read, which I guess was the author's plan all along. Honestly, I don't have much to say about Aoife. I did not expect her to be the killer, that's for sure. I did not expect her to be the one who arranged all of this just to get revenge on Will. Not at all. If anything, having her POV sometimes felt a little useless. Since she wasn't a part of the actual wedding, she felt so separated from the group. In a sense, it felt like she had nothing to do with this story. In my mind, she was not significant enough to be the victim or to be the killer. If anything, to me, Aoife just felt like a stranger looking into the wedding party. Someone remote, someone we as the readers could identify with. I guess I do not need to explain to you guys just how wrong I actually was. Out of everyone in the wedding party whose POVs we have, I think that I feel the worst for Hannah. She came through as a kind, smart, and self-sufficient individual. Someone I would enjoy being around. As well as the majority of her experience was something that the readers could easily relate to. She didn't want to be here. She clearly doesn't have a positive relationship with Jules. From her very first chapter, it is rather obvious that she is envious of this friendship Jules and her husband have. And while in the beginning we can feel that this jealousy is unfounded, irrational, the more we as the readers get to observe Charlie and Jules together, the better we understand why Hannah feels the way she does. Anyhow, let's put Jules aside for a moment. As I said, Hannah doesn't want to be here. Yet she still tries to look at the positives of the situation she is in. As a couple with small children, Hannah and Charlie didn't have much time or energy lately to just be a couple. And yet these plans also flew out of the window rather fast as soon as Hannah realized that Charlie would rather spend the weekend hanging out with Jules, trying to prove that he's cool, manly man to Will's classmates, and drinking and being neglectful towards his wife in general. Overall, I just love that Lucy Foley defined Hannah as the plus one. This label emphasizes the fact that Hannah doesn't know anyone here. That Charlie's the only person she can count on in this wedding, and therefore his abandonment felt even ickier to me. Nevertheless, we see Hannah managing to entertain herself by creating a friendship of sorts with Olivia or by touring the island alone. To me, Hannah felt like the most grown-up character in this novel, and I respected her for all of it. Now, Charlie, on the other hand, to me, he felt like a man without a backbone. He ignored his wife, he allowed to be pressured into a stupid drinking game and staying behind to get wasted, even though he knew that he does not have the most stable relationship with alcohol. And more often than not, to me, just felt like he was ashamed of his wife. And that's a pet peeve of mine that I can't stand or understand. Anyhow, I would have let all of this slide, but then we got the revelation about Charlie's infidelity. Now that's when I got pissed. Because it's always fun how postnatal depression and consequently the lack of sex is over and over again perceived as a woman's fault. Well, poor Charlie, he didn't have sex in a while. He is not to be blamed for needing to get laid. The fact that Hannah didn't have sex for exactly the same amount of time as her husband means nothing. Since, women don't need sex, women don't enjoy sex. Therefore, poor Charlie's indiscretion should be understood and forgiven. To be honest with you, I feel like in the last few years I've seen and read this exact excuse for cheating everywhere. And I find it difficult to believe that this is actually a common problem. That there are actually people like that who would betray their partner during such an incredibly difficult period in their lives. Now, the book ends without us getting to know if Hannah and Charlie will stay together and try to make their marriage work, or if this weekend was the beginning of the end of their relationship. And I actually like that quite a lot. All through the book, Hannah's story felt grounded, realistic. Having this open ending for her and her husband just highlighted the fact that their story goes on, whether we will get to witness it or not. Jules. Now that's a character I loved reading about. Not that I liked her as a character, it felt more like an inability to look away from a car crash. As soon as you meet Jules, you know that she is just a ticking time bomb. Looking from outside, she has it all. Perfect career, perfect looks, perfect husband-to-be, a perfect wedding with a perfect life ahead of her. But looking at it all through Jules' own eyes gives us the privilege of knowing just how fake it all is. Jules herself is incredibly insecure as a person, and despite putting on the school front, she can't help but crave validation from others. Consequently, she only does things that look good to others. She cares so much about the way she appears that she always ends up wearing a mask of sorts. She arranges this posh wedding party despite not actually having enough money to cover it all. She gets angry with her dad but doesn't banish him from the wedding because she believes that guests, people she don't even really know or like, would think that it's weird. She enjoys the idea of others hearing her when she and Will are having sex because she believes that it portrays her as someone who is wanted. She's the type of person who doesn't really trust anyone and always feels the need to be in control And to be honest, I can only imagine how exhausting and lonely that must be. Jules is marrying Will, and yet I can't claim to believe that she actually loves him. Now, I'm sure that she's infatuated with him, but is it actually love? Well, I honestly don't see how it could be, taking into consideration the fact that she doesn't even show to him her real self. We see her over and over again trying to calm herself down because she doesn't want Will to see the real, unhinged version of herself. Growing up, Jules craved attention, something she didn't get from either one of her parents, and Will, as far as we know, was the first person who made her feel actually seen. Not the real her, obviously, but this perfect facade she puts up. These two match each other. It's like both of them have this mental list of what a perfect partner should look and be like, and they tick all of each other's boxes. To me, this is a wedding of two strangers. Jules and Will don't actually know each other. They don't know each other's friends or each other's families. The main reason for this marriage is just a possibility to show off, to enforce their positions in society. All that being said, I feel like Jules and Will are pretty perfect as a couple. They both act. Now, if one of them would have been genuine, or if one of them would have stopped acting down the road, I'm sure they would have not made it as far as they did. There's one thing, however, that I'm not entirely sure how to feel about, and that's the end of Jules' story in the novel. I think we can all agree that her perfect wedding day ended up being not exactly what she had in mind while planning it. I would bet everything I own that Jules did not expect her sister to try to commit suicide, to learn that Olivia and her new hubby had a relationship, or that she will become a widow just hours after becoming a wife. And yet, the ending where she breaks down and cries in front of everyone while bonding with Olivia doesn't really feel like the catharsis it should be. After everything I learned about Jules, in best case scenario, it feels like a very temporary honest show of emotion caused by overwhelming stress, or at worst case scenario, it feels like an act, a grieving wife, something that others are expecting her to be. Truth be told, I found it incredibly difficult to feel sorry for Jonah. I get that his life turned out not the way he hoped it would. I get that he is feeling left out by their high school friend group. I get that he's feeling guilty for the part that he played in the death of his classmate, and I get just how pissed he is by the fact that Will took away his one opportunity to improve his life by building a career. And yet, I felt like more often than not, he himself is the main reason that's holding him back. We see throughout the book that he has issues with drugs. We know that he lost his previous job for being unreliable. He seems to be completely stuck in the past, and instead of trying to figure out how to move forward and find something that would make him happy, he's wasting all of his energy blaming others for his misfortunes, feeling jealous of his friends, and lying his ass off, trying to create this image of success. I get the trauma he's living with after he realized that his and Will's actions cost someone's life. But I do not think that he has any higher moral ground when it comes to Will. I mean, he was there as well. He helped to kidnap the lonely boy, he followed Will's lead and tied his hands, and he, just like Will, led him there. Alone, in the night, tied up. And I just can't wrap my head around the bullshit of, I did not know that the water would rise in the nighttime. I mean, Jonah lived in that school. He woke up every morning in his own bedroom and saw the water through his window. How in the world he could have forgotten that? In my eyes, they both are equally responsible. The only difference that I see between Will and Jonah is that Jonah actually is ridden with guilt over what they have done. Yet he doesn't feel guilty enough to actually confess to the crime and face the consequences. Now, for most of the novel, we only get to see Will through the eyes of others, and they all tell us pretty much the same story. Will is charming, he's successful and intelligent and capable and very handsome. Will is the type of man people want to follow. His energy attracts them. He's just a little too perfect to be real. And then we learn about all that happened when he was a teenager. And then we learn that Steve and Will are one and the same. And then we learn that he is the man involved with Alice's tragedy. And I wonder, just how much can one man fuck up in his life? A very short life, I may add. The moment we get to know that Will was the one that was murdered, we get a chapter from his POV for the very first time in the novel, and I thought that that was just fucking genius. And one of the first things we get to know is that he actually believes that he's a good guy. After the manslaughter, revenge porn, ditching a woman after he got her pregnant, betraying a best friend, and lying to a woman he was planning to marry, he actually honestly believes that he's a good guy. I found that simply mind-blowing. I have to admit, however, that despite Lucy Foley doing such a wonderful job at tying up all the loose ends, I can't say that I loved it. I know I'm being nitpicky, but once everything was said and done, Will ended up feeling less like a real person and more like a caricature of a villain. It felt like everything that's bad in this world was caused by Will. I see how perfectly, how naturally the story flows when it comes to Will and Jonah having this tension because of what they did as teenagers, as well as I see how the role he played in Olivia's life brought him into Jules' life. But realistically, how likely is it that he, out of millions of people, ended up being the guy who dated Hannah's sister? I mean, did we really need that plot twist? Because to me, personally, that part of the story felt a little bit like a stretch. I just didn't need him to be responsible for all the possible sins. Everything that we learned about him up until then was already enough. So before we wrap this up, let's take a moment to talk about the ending of the novel. While I overall enjoyed the ending as I found it thrilling and interesting just to see how all the moving parts connect, I also don't feel like this was the right ending. Because if we are trying to be just, we have to take into consideration the fact that now Ayofi is a murderer too. Yes, she punished Will by killing him, and she inadvertently punished Jonah as he's the one who got blamed for Will's murder. And initially we might think that justice was restored, that evil people got their comeuppance. But in reality, Ayofi is not some sort of a vigilante, and while we do understand her reasoning for doing what she did, and while I can very much sympathize with it, I still don't think that she should have been left off the hook this easily. I felt like a more correct ending would have been if Ayofi killed Will, got caught doing so, and ended up going to prison for the crime she committed. While at the same time, all this situation would have pushed too heavily on Jonah, and he would have finally realized that he can only move on if he admits to the part he played in this, confesses, and faces the consequences for it. Now all of this just felt a little too much like a traditional happy ending, but that's just my opinion. What about yours?